It's 14 hours.
Hello, welcome to Wisper University, and we're going to change things up a little bit this year and try to do some interviews of people who have been influential in the tech and wireless industry. I'm Nathan Stuke. I'm the CEO of Wisper. Started Wisper about almost 18 years ago, and a lot of people say, "Wow, you're so successful! You know, overnight success." And no. We're an overnight success story. 18 years in the making, and probably the 30 years before that while I did other things. But today we have Daniel White from Atheral with us, and we're gonna have a little chit chat. I've known Daniel for a long time, and I think he's got a wealth of knowledge. So, welcome to the show, Daniel. And I hate doing introductions, so I'm gonna let you do your own introduction. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Nathan. So I've been in the Wisper industry. I like to say, I think I'm going on 15 years now, a little over 15 years. I just got out of the Marine Corps and ended up, my dad wanted to have the local Wisp install at his house. So he asked me, since I wasn't working, to watch the installer, and it ended up, I got offered a job to do installations, my dad's driveway. I thought, I'll try this out for a couple weeks and see how I like it. I planned to go back to college maybe. I was thinking about becoming a lawyer, law school, things like that. Here I am 15 years later, owning my own company, and I haven't left the industry since. I've certainly changed a lot of vendors and primarily been on the vendor side of the industry, but I started Atheral coming up about 3 years, and been doing VoIP ever since. So
yeah. Absolutely. Well, it's exciting. It's interesting how we get into the industry, right? I started Wisper because my next door neighbor needed internet, right? And I did the research and was like, how do I do this? How do I solve it for him? And when I figured out how to solve it for him, I was like, well, I can do this for more people. So Wisper was born. So yeah, exactly. So tell me a little about Atheral. What does Atheral do, and kind of what's your space?
Sure. Yeah. So we are a white label VoIP company. What that means is, as an ISP, if you want to offer voice to your customers, you can give us a call. We'll do all the branding. We'll make everything look like it's yours. And you'll have a complete voice platform that you don't have to really do any engineering, or you don't have to really do any of the complicated back end learning about VoIP and everything that goes with that. We take care of that, so you can just focus on your business, selling internet, and that's pretty much takes it from there. It's we try to make it easy, simple, and just kind of be the man behind the curtain, so to speak.
Yeah, no, that's good. The alphabet soup of VoIP, right? Because there are, I mean, every niche in the industry has a whole new set of acronyms that you have to learn and how to get it going. So we were kind of joking a little bit about your background there, and I asked you if that was like, a staged background, or if that was, is that your real office? So tell me a little bit about why you have all those phones behind you, and what's that about?
So, being one of the two founders of the company, when, my background, having been working for a Wisp, I went from being an installer to doing tech support for about 2 weeks to climbing towers for a really long time. And my background, I feel like, is engineering. I like to get my hands dirty. I like to actually play with it. But probably, I guess it was 2014, I started working for SAF. It transitioned more into a sales role, business development management role. And when I did that, I kind of lost the engineering piece. I wasn't able to do it much anymore. But when I started the company, there being only 2 people, I had to kind of get my hands dirty again. And so behind me is just part of my lab. So when we say we support equipment, it's not just kind of a figure of speech, or, we look at the manual or something. We actually have all these phones in our lab. We try them out. We test the features. If something goes wrong, usually the only way we can fix it is by replicating it on that device. I know I have an old Cisco phone behind me I just had to buy off eBay because somebody was having an issue with it, and I couldn't replicate it with what I had. So I actually had to go buy the hardware to have it, and find that one line of code that had to get changed to make it work. So working lab,
Wow.
my little setup. So the 50% of the time I get to be an engineer here, my toys are behind me to play with.
That's cool. So those are real blinking lights that really mean something instead of just being staged. So
they are. There's a Ubiquity switch there, a Fortinet switch, MikroTik router, and then below on this rack that you can't see, a bunch of ATAs and things like that.
yeah, cool. So you mentioned that Atheral is about 3 years old. How many employees do you have now?
So we're at 3 full-time employees.
Okay.
We've got a number of, I guess, part-time or engineers that we pay by the hour for certain development projects. We're fairly lean and mean right now. We're actually looking, though, probably to hire 2 more people in the next 60 days, I hope.
Nice.
We're kind of reaching that growth spot where it's hard for all of us to kind of keep up with the growth and the demand for VoIP.
Yeah, that's a good problem to have.
It is.
So I imagine you probably wear, with 3 employees and a whole bunch of kind of part-time, you probably wear like 5 different hats, 6 different hats, 10 different hats.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that. I mean, this, yes, we're kind of a technical show and everything, but the leadership side, what has that been for you, especially since you've been in other businesses where you only had to wear 1 hat? How has it been for you wearing lots of different hats?
I think I love it, honestly. The part of the issue I have is I get bored easy.
Okay.
I have I'd say an element of ADHD where I have to switch between topics or things to stay engaged during the day. And when I've been kind of more focused on just one thing, sometimes the day-to-day can kind of get boring. But from a management perspective, not my first management job, I guess I transitioned kind of into sales management at SAF.
Okay.
I hired on as a territory sales manager. And then when Christoph Reikens left, I created kind of the void for the VP of sales for North America. So I became that, and then ended up as CTI Connect for a couple of years, or Convergence. And I ran the hardware distribution team there. And what's kind of cool in those roles is I got to, I could kind of be the sales guy again when needed. I could kind of play around with some of the operations stuff and, work with the warehouse, things like that. I was notorious at SAF for when a shipment would come in, if I was in the office, for being the guy that get on the forklift and running the forklift, just because it was something I loved to do.
Yeah.
But I get that, even 10 times fold here. I have to do all the strategic planning for the company. I might be doing engineering, working on servers. I'm doing sales one moment. I do all the sales demos here. Then I'm doing the marketing. Really, there isn't. Probably the only thing I don't do here is the accounting. I've got other people for that. I hate doing accounting, so I learned long ago that I needed to off-source that.
Yeah,
I should say.
Absolutely. Off, out, it doesn't matter. Just get it away, right?
Get it away. Yeah, numbers are not my thing. My brother got those genes. He's the accountant of the family, so I'll do everything else, just not accounting.
Yeah. So how did you choose VoIP? You went from an installer to, I find it funny that you were tech support for like two weeks. I'm sure that's because they really needed a tower person, not because you couldn't talk to people.
It was.
Yeah. So, and then you went to towers, and then, so how did you choose voice? What was kind of the draw to that?
Yeah. So I was working at CTI when the CAF2 auction started, and being in that role at CTI, I definitely spoke to Wisps every day. That's who CTI serves, and I kept hearing all the horror stories, not just from our customers, but from other people in the Wisp community, of them getting overbuilt by CAF, or they wanted to apply for CAF, but in every case, it seemed like VoIP was the issue, not the speeds, not necessarily the build out requirements, the paperwork. it was the VoIP component. They were afraid by it. They'd been burned by other vendors providing a good sales pitch, but no engineering help on the back end. They were afraid of the regulatory aspect of VoIP. And I got to talking to some people there, and was really kept thinking, like, there needs to be somebody in the Wisp industry that knows if there's an issue, it's not the radio necessarily, it's not the cable on the side of the house necessarily, all the excuses other VoIP companies do, and really focus in the space, focus on, like the Calix routers and the Cambium ATAs and the stuff that Wisps use. So when I ended up leaving CTI, I didn't really know what I wanted to do do next. I thought I was going to go back to work for a manufacturer again. And I got prompted by the other co-founder of the company, Russell Irwin, when he left. He was the VoIP guy. And, he said, we had talked about it a bunch, and he said, let's do it. So we did. and the first year was definitely really challenging. Russell left about a year and a half ago. He was also a pastor, and
cool.
We both knew at one point there was a passion that was going to have to take over, and his church won, rightly so. So, that was kind of another shift at the beginning of last year, right before, I think that he left at the end of January. So right before the pandemic, right. And it's been a wild ride, definitely, for the whole time the company's been in business. But really, CAF was the impetus for why we did this, because of how many ISPs their areas weren't served just because they didn't offer VoIP. So, right.
Even though they did serve them, they just didn't have the voice component of that.
Yeah, they had the 25x3, just not the voice.
Right.
So, I was pretty shocked. I guess back then, nothing really shocks me anymore relating to voice. And just like everyone thought I was crazy. Like, cell phones have taken over the world. Why do you need to do VoIP? Well, even if the regulatory component, I feel like, goes away, I don't know what it's like for your business, but the business aspect of VoIP, businesses and even residential, it's still pretty healthy. We're seeing easily 20% growth for all of our ISPs that are marketing it. They're all growing at a very steady and healthy pace with it. So,
well, that's good. I think it's spoken like a true entrepreneur, that you went out and solved a problem, right? And a lot of entrepreneurs, that word gets thrown around a lot. In one of the books I read called the Innovation Stack, he said it's really overused. And somebody who goes out and starts a coffee shop because they think it's a great idea, and they just copy somebody else's coffee shop idea. Don't get me wrong, that's an entrepreneur, right? You take risks as an entrepreneur. But really solving a problem and doing something that others aren't, or solving a niche, that's really kind of that entrepreneurial skill that you have to have, and just the attitude that we're gonna figure this out, right? We're gonna solve this. So talk to our listeners a little bit about, what went through your head when you were deciding to go, no go, right? Is this a good idea? Is it not a good idea? I mean, obviously when you left CTI, you kind of were like, so what am I doing? So, right, that was already solved, right? A lot of people have a day job and they're like, should I leave? Should I not? How do I start this at night? But what was kind of going through your head when you were evaluating go, no go? Is this a good idea or not a good idea?
I think I'd already sold myself before that fateful call from Russell, where he had said that he was looking for a new thing. Just in our conversation, because we had talked about it for probably 18 months. I said, since RDOF got announced, and I started talking to ISPs about do you offer VoIP? No, I'm going to get overbuilt or whatever. I feel like I'd already kind of convinced myself that the problem was there. I'm not 100% sure why. I don't know that I ever consciously stopped after that phone call to say, should I do this? I think it was, let's go and let's do it. There was challenges up front. Capital, I could only fund so much of this out of my own pocket, so I had to borrow some money. We ended up bringing on an investor early on, who helped quite a bit to kind of get the the ball rolling, so to speak. But really, I think this just kind of even goes back to why I've run and I serve on the board with you. Is I hated seeing wireless ISPs at risk because of this component to their business that they didn't have, and it bothered me that nobody was really helping these companies. That they could spin it up, but it's a lot of engineering work. I had no idea how much of a niche or a specialty VoIP was really until I was really into it. And I understand why people are afraid to spin up their own servers and try to offer it. So I wanted to solve that. I couldn't stand by and see so many entrepreneurs like yourself just potentially be put out of business by the government, or not be able to apply for those funds, to expand their business. I wanted to help level the playing field for our industry, and I hope I've done that. We had 10 successful bidders for RDOF that are using our service. So, I knew it was going to happen again. After CAF 2, there was already the writing on the wall that there was going to be another bid or another phase. And I'm really excited for CAF 2. We only have 2 providers that are using us because most of those providers had to figure out a solution, right?
Already.
We're already too late probably for CAF. But for RDOF, we were here. And 10 successful bidders are using us. So that was a big win to me personally, because that meant those are 10 businesses that we helped get the funds to expand their business. And then we have so many more ISPs that instead were able to say their service area was served if they didn't want to go after the cash. So I thought that was a win-win.
No, that's great. That's great. So you mentioned the board that you serve with me, and I just wanted to clarify for anybody who didn't know. So we're both on the Wisper, our Wireless Service Providers Association board. Daniel's been on there for you're going into your second year on this term. Third year term. So we got on at the same time. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So absolutely.
And then I served 1 year previously.
Right.
2012, I think it was.
Yep, I was on at that time too. Yeah. So and then I took some years off, and you took some years off. So I wanted to go back to you mentioned there were a lot of challenges starting your business, and one of them was financing. And is that the biggest one, or what would you say was the biggest challenge that you faced when getting Atheral off the ground?
Capital was definitely one of the biggest ones. Because we don't hide the vendors that we use. So we have a NetSapient soft switch, and the licensing and the software alone was we were looking at $100,000 investment. I didn't have that type of cash. I had 6 months or something that I could not work, but I didn't have $100,000 to invest. The servers were another 25, 30,000. Plus, then we got to buy phones and set up a lab and websites. And, I think the biggest challenge was the capital, but then just the initial setup. That took months just to kind of get the business structured, to build the service, just to get it ready. And even with us using relatively off-the-shelf components, we didn't write our own code at that point or anything. It took a long time. It was a lot of engineering, and it was a lot of work, a lot of sleepless nights. So probably labor was, another issue, and even ongoing. One of my challenges running this business is finding other experienced engineers that I can hire, even if it's part-time, to help me with it, because it is a very technical field, and there's surprisingly not. The Wisp industry itself is small. VoIP is probably pretty huge, but as far as the engineers that know the depth that I need, not a lot out there. That's probably one of the bigger challenges too.
Absolutely. So you said something that intrigued me. that you probably had about 6 months before, that you didn't have to work. That's pretty amazing when you listen to Dave Ramsey and you listen to people that most people, no matter how much you get paid, live paycheck to paycheck. And I think that's awesome that you were able to have that, and that allowed you to then make good decisions and not, you were able to say, I'm going to ramp into this job or this company, I'm going to build it, as opposed to saying, oh, well, I better go get a job now because I don't have the funds. And so that's not a small thing. I hope people picked up on that, because that is something that a lot of people don't do and don't have. And it allows you to rest easy, right? None of us, even if you own a business, although I would say you have more control over your job if you own a business than if you work for someone else, right? Because it's out of your control, and there's lots of things, but there's so many things that could derail COVID, outside industry forces that would cause you to lose your job, that having that as a safety net is awesome. I'm so glad you had that.
So did I. The thing that had been for me, that when I made that jump into the manufacturing side of the space, I Bridgewave Communications was the first company I worked for. I was a sales engineer there, and I got laid off Christmas of 2012. It was like the week before Christmas or something like that. It was in December. I got the call from the VP of sales, and it was they needed more money, so they applied for finance. They got an investment, but part of the conditions of that investment is they had to lay off, I think it was 50% of the company. And so it wasn't personal. I didn't do anything wrong, but as you said, those things you can't control. And they gave me, I want to say it was a 2-month severance package, which I was very thankful of, because I didn't have any savings
something. Right.
And I quickly realized, especially, the Wisp space itself is small. The vendor side, in some ways, is even smaller. There's only so many jobs out there that I felt like I could apply for and stay in, this field, this career. And I ended up finding something within that 2 months. That's when I went to SAF. Fortunately, right time, they were looking for somebody. They had to sell me on it because it was that Latvian company I didn't know a whole lot about. But
right.
And that worked out great. But when I left SAF, by that point I knew, like, there might be 6 months between me working for different vendors, and I got to know enough salespeople in the vendor side of the industry, the good, even some of the best ones, that you would see. They take 4 or 5 months off, and it's not necessarily by choice. It's there's only so many positions available to apply for out there. So
wow. So somebody who's been through that. So we've held on to some employees, and we never laid them off, but we had to fire them for one reason or another, and we've chosen not to do it the week before Christmas, and it's just a personal thing that it's like, well, we can do it, later. So you've been through it right before Christmas. What's your take as somebody been through it? Is it better to wait until the first week of January to let you have a great Christmas, or was it better to have it before so you had lots of time with family? Kind of what was your experience there?
I've taken the philosophy, I think, about not hiring, but firing or laying people off. I would rather give them as much business time as possible to find a new job. So I probably would have preferred to wait to the first week of January to get that notice. And, Christmas is kind of unique too, because you're spending money on gifts, and there's all the pressure about finances, and now you don't have a job. Fortunately, they gave me a severance package. If they hadn't given me that, I probably would have been freaking out, because for those next 2 weeks, I couldn't make phone calls or even look for a new job.
Right.
And I'd always believed that it was better to fire on a Friday, not end of the week. They have the weekend, whatever. I was actually at Convergence that my mind got changed there. And Brian Young, who Mark Kerr, they had given me some examples, like, no, it's better to fire on a Monday, because then they have all week then to start looking for a job. They can immediately start trying to find that next step.
Right.
And I've kind of come to believe in that too.
That's interesting.
Yeah. If you could take the time off and spend some time with family, if you can afford to take a month or two off, that's great. But I think most people, one, it's a punch in the gut. If you're laid off or you're fired, it doesn't matter. But the best way to get over that is to start looking again, right? So
Right.
I think, giving people time is probably best. If you can delay the decision, I would.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've laid off 2 people in the history of Wisper, both in 2008. We went from 2 installer crews down to 1. Neither one of them could do, we typically hired a construction person and a computer person, and we put them together on a 2-person team. Once we split those teams, neither one of them could actually, one of them was more technical and couldn't do the construction as well, and one of them was more construction, could do the technical as well. And we tried to find other positions for them within the company. And then, of course, the downturn in 2008, I wasn't sure. And it was gut-wrenching to lay somebody off. Now, fortunately, one of them, he had a medical degree and went back into that, which is where he should have been anyway. But the other one, we ended up hiring him back a year or so later. But I vowed never to lay somebody off again. And yes, I'll fire for performance and I'll fire for non-cultural fit type thing. But if you lay somebody off, in my opinion, it's mismanagement of the company. I have failed the company, right? I didn't see something coming. I didn't see something happening. And maybe I can say that because we're in the booming industry and it's everybody needs internet. But I don't know. I have this real hard time with justifying a layoff just because something didn't go the way I thought it was going to. And I know a lot of companies will be like, well, no, if I did lay them off, the whole company would have gone under. At least, the 300 other people we kept, didn't lose their job, and it was only 30. I get that. And I hope just to never be in that position ever, because it's a serious thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, one of probably the worst parts too is the people you're laying off might be the right fit culture-wise. They might be your star performers even in that field. But I never want to be in that position. I always rather try to find a place, or maybe cut back some hours or do something. I would even, now that I own the company, I'd rather me take a salary hit to keep them on. And I'm sure those are all things that you struggled with too then.
I didn't take my first paycheck for 3.5 years. So fortunately, I was a good programmer. I would go do programming up in Chicago, 90 hours in a week, and then live off of that money for a while. And then we had a stretch in 2006, 2007 that I got 2 or 3 paychecks. And that was it, because, I kept telling my wife, it's okay, dear, we own the company. And she's like, I can't pay the bills with ownership. It's like, oh yeah, she does all of our personal finances. So, it definitely is a struggle. And starting a small business, it's awesome and exhilarating, but you have to be in it for the long haul. It is not an overnight success story. Kind of as I mentioned at the beginning of the intro, it is not an overnight success story, and it always takes twice as long as you think, or 3 times as much money, or 3 times as much time, and twice as much money. It doesn't matter. So looking back now that you're 3 years into it and you started Atheral, what advice would you give somebody who's like, hey, I'm thinking about starting a business, or I've got this niche? What's your kind of like one advice that you would give them as we kind of wrap up this interview here?
You got to have passion for it.
Okay.
You got a long road ahead of you. Like you said, I didn't take a paycheck the first year. And then when I started taking a paycheck, it was below minimum wage. Yeah. And just recently, actually, I started paying myself something that wasn't minimum wage. It felt good, that I finally got to that point. But even then, I'm thinking, well, if I take less money, then I could go hire another employee. And and that's the way my mind thinks. It's
balancing act, right?
Yeah, and it's in some ways, it's been hard for me to step back and realize what I've accomplished and want to even slightly reward myself. It's more, how do I keep growing this, and how do I pay my employees more? And I think the way that I've made it through the darkest days has been passion. Like I wake up, I want to do this. I have a core belief that I want to help my customers. And my customers being ISPs, right? I want to help these ISPs grow. I want to be part of their success. I don't want them to feel like forced that they have to use me or something. So being passionate about my customer success has made it really easy to be passionate about this and put in the long hours and not get burned out. I think it's just passion.
That's really good advice, because it's was it Mark Twain, I think, is attributed with, if you never want to work another day in your life, do something you love. And we've been growing by leaps and bounds here, and people are like, well, are you going to keep doing what's your end game with the company? It's like, I'm having fun. This is amazing. Right. I have resources now. I have employees now that I get to affect, their trajectory in life and train them and teach them. And it's fun. So why in the world would you, this doesn't work. I get to come into work every day. I don't have to come into work every day, but I get to. So it's all about your perspective. So,
absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being our first interview. This is fun. I always like doing these. You never know kind of how it's going to go, but I think it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, anytime. I've enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks to everybody who was watching. You can check us out here on Facebook, or you can, we're on a YouTube channel. And please check out our next show that we have next time. And thanks so much for being part of it and watching. See ya.
Have a good one.